How are there two Indias for women that exist here? What is the generational gap we are talking not in just terms of growth but also health which is faced by women? What are the reasons behind it and what are the implications and way forward that are much needed as of now? Whenever we talk about women and women empowerment, glass ceiling is something that we have heard. But here is something new, health ceiling. And it's different and there's a generational gap too. Hello everyone, welcome to Vajiram and Ravi's Flash News. My name is Shubhangi Singh and today we are going to understand that how come there are two different Indias when we are talking about women in our country. How there is a generational divide in terms of real health services when we are talking about women in our country. So let us begin with understanding this picture, that why we are talking about and what are the reasons that there are two Indias for women in our own country. What is the divide that we are referring to? So when we talk about the divide, it highlights the sad situation that when we are celebrating our increasing GDP, we are silently ignoring our mothers and their long-term health. So when we talk about this situation, it highlights the dichotomy associated with development, where we see rising incomes and it should gradually translate into better nutrition and better health, better sanitation facilities, better period product, menstruation product access, especially for adolescent girls. In this development, we are seeing that this growth is not translating into the desired health outcomes, especially for adult women. So rising incomes, yes, it is happening. However, when we divide it, its effect into two categories, where we are talking about adolescent girls and then we are talking about adult women, the access to health and health outcomes looks very different in both of these situations. So there is a generational gap in terms of health outcomes that we expect with the rising incomes. यहाँ पे translation जो है हमारे rising incomes का standard of living और health outcomes से match नहीं कर रहा है, especially when we talk about adult women. There is another factor that we need to take into our consideration, that the core problem here is the fact that the development model that is in front of us, it is very transactional. ट्रांजैक्शनल से क्या मतलब है मेरा? ट्रांजैक्शन से मतलब ये है कि अगर कोई प्रॉब्लम एग्जिस्ट करती है तो वो तब सॉल्व होगी या तो वो पैसे से सॉल्व हो सके, मनी कैन बाय और हेल्प आउट दैट प्रॉब्लम, और व्हाट एक्चुअली द प्रेजेंट केयर डिमांड्स. So if we talk about women healthcare, the most centric thing that we are looking into two parts. First, the maternity care. Second, we are looking into the nutrition of adolescent girls. That's all. If we are talking about adult women and long-term health care that they need, it is being preventive health care also. It is being totally ignored. So our developmental model in terms of healthcare is focusing only on two things that can be helped by money and other what is the current demand in terms of the situation. Now that we have a fair idea कि exactly problem क्या है and why are we talking about health ceiling specifically for adult women here. Now let us get into the data and understand the situation at the real ground. So if we look at the data, especially to understand that what is the generational gap, I'll give you an example here. How I'm explaining the generational gap. So if you look at the women from 1990, if you look at the women from 1950s, they were expected to be married by 15. They were likely to bear 6 children. Maternal mortality rate was around 2,000 per 1 lakh live births. Only 1 of 11 girls, that means around 9% was literate. But when you talk about today, then we are showing you a generational switch where we see average age for marriage has changed. Average bearing children, that is somewhere around 2. Then if we talk about maternal mortality rate, it has reduced to 97 per 1 lakh birth. Then 77% of women in India are literate. When we are talking about today's time itself, then again we have to look into the generational divide which is present here again. So how are we going to look into this? That the fact that when the state's per capita income is increasing, it is definitely showing an improvement in terms of malnutrition that we see in girls. So when we are talking about girls, that means I am referring to the age of 18 to 20. The malnutrition, that means the health outcome seems to be improving for this particular section, but at the same time the higher per capita income is not translating into better hysterectomy rates, menopausal care, and the chronic reproductive disorders that are present in adult women. So that means the increase in income is helping one generation, but it is not looking at the health concerns of the other generation at all. Let us look at some data to understand this whole concern. So when we are talking about this particular log which is present in front of us, you will see the underweight versus log per capita. So let us look at this. When we see this, you will find certain high income states like, for example, Tamil Nadu, where the underweight percentage is comparatively less and log per capita income is higher. Similarly, if we look at NCT, National Capital Territory of Delhi, the percentage of underweight is comparatively way lesser and the log per capita income way higher. So this shows a complementary scenario when we are trying to understand the situation, that the increase in the per capita income, is it translating into better health situations? Yes, it is translating, but it is happening for a given section just the way we were talking about it. Now going back to understanding this particular health crisis in detail. So when we talk about specifically adult women, they are in the need of the situation, in the need of health care, which helps to make sure that they are better diagnosed, they are better cared for, and they are better heard. And all this, that they are underdiagnosed, undercared for, and unheard, highlights the fact this is a system rot, that all of this is taking place. What do we mean by system rot? That the fact that we are looking at women just as reproductive vessels, not as a wholesome human being, because the focus is only on, if you will see the data, the focus is merely on the fact that they should be given best of the health care available, especially for the maternity phase, which highlights that we are not looking at the lens where we are considering women full wholesome human beings. And this success, जहाँ पे हम ये जो child indicators में success देख रहे हैं, वो बिल्कुल ये नहीं दर्शा रहा है, जैसे कि हमने यहाँ पे डेटा देखा, आगे भी हम डेटा देखेंगे, ये बिल्कुल ये नहीं इंडिकेट कर रहा है कि that means उनकी लाइफ लॉन्ग हेल्थ जो है वो assured है. And this is where we understand the rising income, the rising GDP that we are celebrating. It is not actually coming down to development. Development, that means the change in the socio-economic indicators, better education, better health, but not just for one generation, but for all. Now moving ahead, now that we have understood the data also, we have understood the crisis also, let us move ahead and understand that what are the reasons that this is happening. We cannot just label it on the system and let it be. We have to understand that what does our society look like that this is happening, what does our economy look like that this is happening. So let us start with the fact that overall in terms of women healthcare, the idea, the accessibility of healthcare is restricted to reaction. That means if अगर कुछ हो गया तो उसे address किया जाएगा. प्रिवेंशन जो है, जहां पे हम कहते हैं प्रिवेंशन इज बेटर देन क्योर, तो प्रिवेंशन जो है वो प्राइमरी मोटिव नहीं है यहाँ पर. तो यहाँ पे जो भी केयर हेल्थ केयर मिल रही है वो इमरजेंसी बेस्ड है. एक लॉन्ग टर्म किसी तरह की क्रॉनिक या लाइफ लॉन्ग नीड्स विद स्पेसिफिक अटेंशन टू अडल्ट वुमेन यहाँ पे नहीं है. अनदर थिंग दैट वी नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड, द रिसर्च इन टर्म्स ऑफ अडल्ट वुमेन, menstruation products and their needs, menstruation medicines is so limited across the globe, और उसका इफेक्ट जो है हमें यहाँ पर इंडिया में भी देखने को मिल रहा है. इसके अलावा अगर हम बात करें सर्जिकल शॉर्टकट्स की, तो यहाँ पर क्योंकि सपोर्ट जो है कॉन्टिन्यूस हमें जो चाहिए वो अवेलेबल ही नहीं है, तो यहाँ पे प्रोसीजर्स जैसे कि अगर हम हिस्टेरेक्टोमी की बात करें तो दे आर द गो टू प्रोसीजर्स इवन व्हेन दे आर नॉट नीडेड. बिकॉज जो सस्टेन्ड सपोर्ट है, हेल्थ केयर है, गाइडेंस है, मेडिसिन है, एक्सेसिबिलिटी टू हेल्थ सिस्टम है, वो अवेलेबल ही नहीं है. तो यहाँ पे हिस्टेरेक्टोमी विच इज अ ऑपरेशन ऑफ रिमूवल ऑफ यूट्रस, समथिंग एज सिवियर एज रिमूवल ऑफ ऑर्गन्स फ्रॉम योर बॉडी इज डन बिकॉज हेल्थ केयर फैसिलिटीज जो हैं वो अवेलेबल नहीं है. इसके अलावा हमें और रीजंस जो है यहाँ पे जो देखने को मिल रहे हैं वो है यहाँ पे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर गैप्स. सो व्हेन वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर गैप्स, यू कैन डायरेक्टली एसोसिएट विद the status of the economy, because when we are talking about economy, infra is the pillar which sustains the economy. Another thing that you should take away from here, when you support women, you are supporting the economy directly. When you are empowering women, you are empowering the economic directly, because this is 50% of the economy's contribution. अगर इनकी हेल्थ खराब है, अगर इनको हेल्थ केयर का एक्सेस नहीं मिल रहा है, तो इकोनॉमिक आउटपुट, अगर आप यहाँ पे सोशल पॉलिटिकल मैटर्स भी नहीं कंसिडर करना चाहते हैं, तो इकोनॉमिक आउटपुट जो है वो भी कॉम्प्रोमाइज हो रहा है. तो यहाँ पे अगर हम इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की बात करें, फॉर एग्जाम्पल आशा और आंगनवाड़ी वर्कर्स, वो ऑलरेडी अगर हम प्राइमरी हेल्थ लेवल पे जाके बात करें तो वो भी इस वक्त ओवरबर्डन्ड है, अंडरपेड है, एज वेल एज अनट्रेन्ड है. So they are also not facilitated with tools and skills so that they can help this particular section of women, so that they do not have to be in the reactive zone and they can make sure that they have access to better health care. Other than that, there is lack of integrated care. As I mentioned, हमें जो health care है, especially for women, वो सर्टेन एजेस पे देखने को मिल रही है. इनिशियल एजेस बिकॉज मॉल न्यूट्रिशन इन्वॉल्व है, स्टंटिंग, वेस्टिंग, दैट इज, एंड लेटर इट विल बी रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर बेटर maternity health, and we are not looking at the times in between and the times after that. That is why I want to highlight the fact that we are just seeing women as just reproductive vessels, not as wholesome human beings, because that would require long-term health care. Now this is what is required, integrated care, so that it starts from adolescence and goes till old age. And the last factor that I want to bring in here from the society itself, that there is a lot of socio-cultural blindness as well as biasness that is present, because a woman's body is still seen as something that is associated, involved and important for childbirth only. Other things associated with it, be it menstruation, be it menopause, be it fatigue, pain, all of this is not seen by society. It is not seen by society at all. Other than that, the responsibilities that are to be shared, the gender roles are definitely overburdening women, especially when it comes to gender role as well. It is burdening women, adult women, more than it is burdening the other gender. Here, the conversation is not about a competition between two genders, rather it is a question that how these important things are relatively ignored at the level of research, implementation, economy and society as well. Now comes the question that what kind of growth we want. We have understood that there is a loophole which is ignoring a section, important section of the society, important part, generational divide that we have been talking about. That means that recalls for an overhaul about the thought of the growth. We need to overhaul this whole system and rethink what kind of growth we are looking for, because not all progress is development and not all development is just. So what is required at this time? This time calls for a policy shift where health needs to be defined holistically, so that we are taking in consideration the chronic diseases, reproductive health disorders, mental well-being as well as menopause support which is required by women. We also need to move ahead and understand that how we can strengthen the human infrastructure. That means empowering Ashas, Anganwadi workers, and give them the tools that is required. That means continuing the medical training, giving them digital support tools, increased honorarium and plus job security. That means they need to be rewarded for their work which they are underpaid for as of now, plus they need continuous training as well, so as to ensure that they are able to deliver down. Furthermore, what has been working, that needs to be expanded further. What has been working? For example, if you're talking about women, especially in terms of sanitary and health conditions, mandatory food fortification, for example, fortified rice, fortified oil, and nutritional education as well, because this has been delivering results and we need to see more of it, especially in coming times. And last but definitely not least, that we need to establish and ensure women wholesome wellness clinic. That means we have to focus on the non-obstetric, that means non-child related gynecologist units, especially at the district level, so that accessibility is enhanced. Focus on long-term, preventive and chronic care. When we are talking about health care, it should be at all age levels and not concentrated at specific one. Now the question comes that what can be done in the coming time? How the system has not been caring enough, and how in the coming times we need to change and rethink the system around us. For example, if you look at the data of the change in the maternity health, especially as compared to last 5 years, you see different vast improvement. Life expectancy has also increased. But at the same time, we have to focus now on lifelong female health. We have to move from reactive to preventive and focus on better well-being indicators, not just economic indicators. Also, we need to understand that this goes beyond GDP. Now, especially today on World Population Day, I would like to leave you with a thought that the true measure of a society is how it treats its women, not just at the birth, but in pain, in age and invisibility. And if we want to rise as a society, if we want to rise as a country, it's time that we give them the recognition, we give them the health care which has been long due. That was all from my side. Thank you so much.